Hey there, IT 145 students. So in this recording, we're going to go through the details of loops in Java. So they start out in section 19, which is the concept of a loop. What is it? So maybe you're familiar with having a child that's very young that you want them to fall asleep, so you decide to drive around the block until they fall asleep. So we have some tested condition. So if they're awake, if that's true, then we're going to drive around the block. And if they're still awake, we're going to drive around the block. So we're going to drive around the block and check each time until they're finally asleep. And when they're finally asleep, we're not going to drive around the block anymore. We're going to exit out and continue on home. So the idea of a loop is we're going to check some condition and then we're going to perform some kind of action based on that tested condition. So this is related to an if statement, right? In the last recording, we looked at if statements where if some condition was true, we executed a body, but we only did it once. Here, we're going to execute this body as long as the tested condition is true. So in Java, the first loop they're going to start us with is a while loop. So this is a loop that's going to execute as long as some tested condition is true. So we have while, a tested condition, just like an if statement wrapped in parentheses. Just like an if statement, this could be checking if something's equal, could be checking a less than, greater than, less than equal, greater than or equal to, could be checking if something's not. So a not operator could be checking a Boolean variable. It is some tested condition. And then you have your open and close curlies. Same rules apply. If there's only one line here, that's what gets executed. But if there's multiple lines, the body of the loop needs to be contained in curly braces. So just write the curlies to start with. So inside these curlies, this is whatever is executed based on the condition being true. So we call it the loop body. And then anything after the loop, those are statements after the loop. So once we exit out of the loop, we then continue on executing our statements. So let's go ahead and just copy this code right here. And let's go dump it into Eclipse. And let's kind of see how this runs. So I'm going to create a new Java project. We'll call this module 3 since I didn't create one for the decision structures. And we're going to add a class. I'll just call it source, whatever. Finish. And really, I just want the body of this main method. All right, so let's paste that in here, make our scanner import. Great. Here's what we have. So we're going to have a loop that's going to loop as long as the variable user character equals y. And so you can see that user character, that's defined as a variable. And this right here, this we say is priming the loop. We are making it so that this loop executes at the beginning. Otherwise, if we didn't say that it's equal to y at the start, this would not execute. So let's go ahead and run this. So it came in here, it printed the value of current power, which is a 2, and now it's waiting for us to read in a character. So let's type yes, we want to continue. And so now the next time it's 4, we're going to hit yes and continue. So it's 8. So this is giving us all the powers of 2 as we loop through. If I type in capital Y, what do you think is going to happen? Is capital Y the same as lowercase y? Nope, we exit out of the loop. So anything that is not y, so if I type in anything that's not y, then we exit out. In fact, they're actually checking the first character. So if I run this again, right? So if I type y and a bunch of stuff, oops, I thought they were looking at the first character. Anyways, that exits this out. So again, back to the premise, we have this while condition. This will execute as long as we have a y as the user character value. And if that doesn't change, then we continue to loop right here. Oh, by the way, anytime you use a while loop, this tested condition somehow needs to get changed. So the outcome has to be able to be changed, which means we have to get a different value for user character. So at some point, they get the user character, and when it's not Y, it exits out. Let me go back here. So again, if we don't prime this, so let me do this. Let's say it's an N. So if we don't prime it to be a Y, look, it said done. We never executed the body of this loop. So always make sure if you have a while loop that whatever tested condition you have, it needs to be made sure that it will execute at least once here. We could have gotten the input before the loop, so we could have done this. So instead of priming it, we could have gone scanner dot next dot char at position 0. So now whatever is typed in here, if it's a Y, then we'll loop. Otherwise, if it's not a Y, then we're not going to loop here. So we'll run it. So it's waiting for us to enter in a character. So I'll type Y. Great. We got the first value 2. I'll type in Y. It's looping right here. That's a 4. And when we type something other than other than lowercase y, then we exit out. So common errors. Again, I mentioned earlier, something about the tested condition has to change. If we don't provide some mechanism of the tested condition getting changed, we create what's called an infinite loop, and it's a loop that that never stops iterating. So for instance, if we come in here and if we comment out this line right here where user character is reread in, we're going to start out with, we'll make it a Y. This is going to constantly run, and you're going to see this output just continue to run. So we're going to run this. We're going to type Y, and there you go. When you see the console doing something like this, you created an infinite loop. So the only way to terminate it is to stop it from running right there. So the reason we're getting zeros is because of overflow. It is multiplying these very quickly, and we don't have any control over this loop. So this created an infinite loop. So again, with a while loop, you need to make sure that the tested condition will change at some point. In this case, we had to reread in the value for user character. Okay, in the next section, they introduce the for loop. So the while loop relied on a tested condition. The for loop is used to execute a specific number of times. So in a for loop, you have an initial expression. You're going to have the tested condition that we are concerned about, and then we have the ability to update a value. And so let's just kind of come down here. Let's get an example that we can run. Right here it is. We're going to copy this. And let's paste it in. Oops, I don't need the main method. Okay. So here is a for loop. So we set this up to run a certain number of times. Now, in their example, they've got this int I right there, loop variable. We're going to delete that. And we're going to come down here and we're going to declare it inside this for loop body right here. So I is going to be a value that controls how many times we want to loop. Here's its tested condition. It's going to start at 0 and it's going to go until it's 10. So start at 0, go until less than 10. So 0 through 9. So we're going to have 0 through 9. That's 10 values. So this is going to loop 10 times. This portion right here increments this counter. So first time through, it's going to be 0. It'll then get incremented. Next time through, it'll be 1, then 2, and so forth. So let's go ahead and just run this. So 1 in savings, 10% interest rate, sure. And so there is the annual savings over 10 years. Man, that really gets big quick. Oh, I need to type it in as a decimal. So not 10%. That is not right. So let's do it right. Let's make sure we get the same values. What do they got? 10,000 and 5%. 10,000, 5%. And do we get the same values? Yes, we do. Did we get 10 values? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, we got 10 values right there. Now, to make this more readable, we could have done this. We could have said start at 1 and go till you get to 10. So that means we have to make it an equals 10. So now this is going to be starting at 1, go through 10, which would be the values 1 through 10. We got 10 values. Again, we should get 15,513 down here. We run it, and sure enough, we get the exact same results. So typically, if you know that you're going to execute something like 10 times, write it out like this. Don't make somebody have to go do the math in their head to figure out how many times the loop is supposed to execute. We'll see later on in our course when we loop through things like arrays that we start at 0 for a particular reason. But if we know we want to execute this 10 times, then we should put in start I at 1 and go through 10. And you don't have to call this 1. This could have been year. So if we wanted to make this even more, is this based on years? Yeah. So we could have made this even more readable by using a loop variable of year. So again, this is going to execute the exact same way. We get the exact same results. And again, this just makes the code a little bit more readable. We know we're going from year 1 to year 10. So nice way to handle that. Oh, by the way, anything that you can do with a for loop, we could have done with a while loop as well. So for instance, I'm going to declare a variable int year equals 1. I'm going to go while year is less than or equal to 10. I'm going to copy this code, paste, and keep in mind it's a while loop here. Okay, so this is a while loop. I have to somehow do something to make this tested condition eventually be false. So we have to manually increment the year ourselves. So I'm going to comment this out. Cross your fingers. This while loop should give the exact same results. Type it in the console here. And sure enough, we get the exact same results. So keep in mind, anything that can be written as a for loop can also be written as a while loop. Now, the reverse isn't true. We're using specific counts here. You'll see examples here where we can't take a while loop and turn it into a for loop. Oh, by the way, a really good usage of a loop is to calculate an average. So you can see here, they're going to read in how many values there are, and then they're going to loop the number of times we expect values to get entered in. They're going to get the value, and they're going to accumulate a sum right here. So the way that this always works is the sum is a variable. We accumulate to it here, and then we print out its result right there. And then they're going to take it a step further and calculate the average. So we know what the sum is, we know what the number of values is expected to be, and we just divide that out. Again, they come down here and point out that a for loop, you typically use it when you know how many times you're going to loop. The while loop is typically performed when you don't know how many times something is supposed to execute. For instance, looping until the user types Q to quit. Okay. They also give an example of finding a maximum value. So we might be inputting in a list of values and we might check to see which one is the max. So as we type in our values, so that's what this is doing right here, we're going to grab the number of values that the user expects. We get the value, and then max so far, that is a variable that's declared outside of the loop. So if it's the first time through, we're going to set max so far to that value. Otherwise, we're going to check to see if the value that was typed in is greater than the maximum. And if that's the case, then we reset max to that value. We can also do things like this where the incrementer is not just by one, but here you can see that they're going to increment by fives. So this would go from 10 to 50, and it's going to go by fives. So I would be 10, next time through it's 15, next time through it's 20, and so forth. So if you wanted to go by fives, or if you wanted to go by twos, or however you wanted to go, you can totally handle that using this for loop definition. Some common errors. So forgetting to increment this value, that's a common error. Also with the for loop, not enclosing the loop body in parentheses. And then another real big error is updating inside the body of the loop this I value. So you would actually be incrementing it twice. So you'd actually be going by twos here. Oh, by the way, you can have loops within loops. So when you have nested loops, you end up with what's called an inner loop body and an outer loop body. And new programmers often struggle with this. So what we have here, and I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and just grab this code. And if I can select all this. So what we're going to do is we're going to read in a, they don't use scanner anymore, do they? Yeah, don't know why they have that. We can comment that out, not being used. What we're going to do is we're going to print out all two-letter combinations. So they're going to start with letter 1 being an A. And so we're going to loop as long as letter 1 is less than or equal to Z. So it's going to go from A to Z. And then inside the body of that loop, so this right here, this is the body of the first loop. We're going to then go from A to Z again. So we've got letter 1, it's going to go from A to Z, and then letter 2 is also going to go from A to Z, but it's going to go from A to Z as this letter changes. So it's going to go from A, and then it's going to go AA, and then we're going to have AB and AC, and then all the way until we get to AZ, and then Once we get to Z, we jump out, and this letter is going to increment to be the next value. So when you run this, we can see that we get all of the two-letter combinations. So this starts with A, right? Letter one is A, and it's going to have 26 values. Well, right here you get all of them. And then we're going to start with the next one, and it's going to make letter A become B. And it's going to continue cycling through. Oh, by the way, one thing that's kind of helpful for new programmers is in Java, you can actually put some labels on your loops. So this is the outer loop. This is the inner loop. So sometimes new programmers find it helpful that they know that this is iterating inside, this is iterating on the outside. Next thing they introduce are the break and continue statements. So a break statement, you've seen it in the switch statement. Its usage here is a little bit different. Here, it's going to exit a loop. Over in the switch statement, it exited out of the switch statement, so it's kind of the same idea, but here it's going to cause termination of the loop. So for instance, let's just put a break right here. And that's not happy. Let's do it here. So if I put a break inside this inner loop here, the first time it does one letter, it should exit out. So let's see here. Do I get, yeah, so I get all the A through Z's, and then this inner loop, it's never getting past letter A. I've got a break statement. It exits out of this loop as soon as it executes. Same thing would happen here. So if I do a break down here, let me do it after. So if I do a break, I should just get A out of this. So I exit the outer loop immediately. I exit the inner loop on its first iteration. So I only get one result. Now, you would not do something like this, but I'm just using this to demonstrate to you that this break statement exits out of your loop. Now, when would you want to use something like that? So when we want to use a break statement would be something like this. So we saw earlier that they were looking for a maximum value. What if we just wanted to search something in a list? So let's do this scanner. I'll call it keyboard. Oh, let's see if I can make this work. We'll do something like this. So we're going to string result equals kb.next. And we'll do this. If result equals high, we're going to break. Okay. So we're going to be typing things in. And if we get a result of high, we're going to exit out of this. Otherwise, we're going to continue on. And I'll do this system.out.println. You didn't type the matching word. Okay, so let's run this. So we type Joe, type Jones, Northwood, we type hi, and watch this. We stopped execution. We didn't even type the matching word because we found what we were looking for. So maybe we should do this. System.out.println, you found the match. Yay. So let's rerun it. Again, I can type whatever I want, gibberish. As soon as I type in the matching word, I found it, and we exit out of this loop. So the break statement is usually used when you are searching for something, you found what you're looking for, you no longer need to continue looping. Okay. They also introduce the continue statement. So the continue statement is used when you want to stop termination of a loop you don't want to terminate the loop, but you want to go to the next iteration. So if I put continue in here, I'm going to be told here I found the match, but I'm going to continue looping all the way through. So didn't type it. Hi, I found the match. But see, I'm still running here. This didn't close out. I'm still running. So again, the continue just simply goes back to the start of the loop every time. So if you have some kind of loop that you check something and you don't want to perform any action after it, use a continue. To be honest, the continue statement in industry, not used very often. Oh, by the way, keep in mind that because we are declaring code blocks, right? So a for loop has a block right here, right? So has a block. Anything that I declare inside this block is only accessible in the block. So if I try to do something like this, system.out.println, and I print I, it's going to say, we don't know what you're talking about because it's not in scope. I is only accessible inside the body of this loop. So same thing was true with our while loop. Anything that was declared inside the body of the loop is only available inside of it. Watch this. Results. If I try to access it here, I can't do it. It's going to say, can't find it, doesn't know about it, hasn't been declared. So things are based on their code blocks. Last loop we're going to look at is the do while loop. So like the while loop, this has a tested condition. However, you can see that the tested condition is at the end of the expression. So what we're going to do is we're going to perform the loop body and then check our tested condition. So if you know that the loop body should iterate at least once, then we use a do while loop. So this is often used to perform menu handling. So we've got int, menu choice. So we're going to do something like this, system.out.println, 1, calculate average, system.out.println, 2, calculate the mean, and then system.out.println, 3, exit. Okay, so, oops. And then we're going to do menu choice equals kb.nextInt. And then while menu choice is not equal to 3. And what's it complaining about? Open, open. Oh, I got open parenthesis right there. How about we do this? Okay. This is after the loop body. We'll say goodbye. So we're going to run this. So look, I printed out my menu choices. 1, okay? And then I'm back, I'm printing out the menu choices again. 2, and I'm printing out the menu choices. When I type 3, look, it exited out of the loop and we said goodbye. So a really nice usage of the do while loop. We know for sure that we want to print out our menu choices at least once. The user is going to perform it at least once. And if they don't want to do anything, they just exit out right away. So that's a really good usage of the do while loop. Okay, so those are the different types of loops in Java. Make sure you're familiar with when to use them, how to use them, and I'll talk to you next time.